Greetings, my friends, and welcome. I wanted to address you in a little bit of a forest side chat to discuss the idea, the reality of empathy. Empathy is something that, until fairly recently, was a myth. It was thought 20 years ago that, at least in Western culture, in the US and my culture, it was thought that empathy was simply an imaginary form of sympathy where you thought that you felt something because you so strongly identified with someone, with their pain or with their happiness. And so that there was a splash over effect where you thought that you felt what they felt. I disagree. Well, I have recently been lectured and told that you can never truly understand someone because you can never really know what they're feeling. It's not true. It might be true for some people. I'm certain it's true for many people. But there are those with an innate ability to dial in the emotions of others. And for those people, very often, it's not a choice. It's a capacity they were born with. It tends to be stronger when they're younger because as you get older, you learn to dial out, to shield, to redirect, to tune out what you are feeling simply as a matter of survival because we are in a world where so much negativity exists that if you allow an open connection between yourself and another, you will be certainly feeling discomfort constantly. It wasn't until my mid 20s and I had an opportunity to learn a very rigorous spiritual discipline that I learned the mild anxiety and sometimes quite severe depression that I felt constantly. That background set of emotions was not generated from within me, rather it was the ambient atmosphere that I existed within. And when I was given the ability to ward off from that while still keeping my capacity intact, that I learned what happiness in life is for the first time. Until that point, I thought it was fairly normal for everyone to feel that level of bitter emotions. And I dare say that that's true for a good many of empaths. In fact, for most of us, it isn't until quite late in life that we discover that not everyone feels the same sensory input that we feel. In fact, it was puzzling to me as a young girl why people would be cruel or strongly competitive with each other given the blowback. And I thought that the dominant um, culture was fairly masochistic because of the emphasis on beating down others for pleasure as well as power and gain. I had trouble understanding that because of how uncomfortable emotionally it made me. Live and learn. My point is, empathy is when you feel the emotions of another person as if it is your own. The stronger that other person feels those emotions, the more likely you are to experience it. And if you're a high level empath, you'll experience it from a distance. You'll experience it regardless of whether you can physically see the other person. You might walk into a room and sit down in a chair that someone else has just occupied and feel their emotion if the emotion was strong enough. You can feel it in a room. It's nearly impossible to avoid. until you learn how to shield it off. Now, there's nothing wrong with empathy per se. It's a gift, it's an ability. It's like having blue eyes or being tall. It's it has its disadvantages, but at the same time, it's a beautiful gift which when you learn how to use it correctly can inspire and make your life better and the lives of those around you as well. However, within our culture, what's more normal is to decide that this is an aberration and to medicate it out of people. In other words, to give them um, enough pharmaceutical medication, which I consider to be poison, to damage or destroy the ability to sense not just emotion coming from others, but some of the higher energies, both the ability of telepathy and the ability to understand and move energies. If you poison your own well, you will become, I suppose, much more comfortable with the soup of negativity that you might be walking through, but it doesn't allow you the capacity to change your situation. All it does is create another cog in the system. So, empathy is when you are able to experience another's emotions. In fact, at times, these are emotions that sometimes you wouldn't experience yourself. You might be completely unfamiliar with, unless you have a connection to someone, and then you're experiencing what they're experiencing. You're experiencing their perspective. A lot of perspective comes from our emotional depth, what we feel. Emotions determine what we value. They determine where we are going to place our goals, what's most important to us. If you don't care about your house, you're not going to attempt to protect it when it's on fire. If you don't care about your life, you're not going to move to defend it. If you don't care about your children, you're not going to take care of them. Our emotions define our goals. They define what's important to us. Emotions are very, very critical to our lives, and they are more strongly tied to source than our minds. If it comes down to a decision between what feels right to you and what your brain is telling you to do, I would err on the side of your feelings. Now, you have to make sure that those feelings are independently generated from you, but more specifically, from your relationship to source, your connection to source. If you can get, and then maintain that connection in a clear and strong flow, then your emotions will very accurately assist you in determining what is true, what is safe, and where you need to put your attention. True, our emotions have been manipulated by those who understand how to herd humans, by those who farm humans. But if you are able to determine and ascertain that your emotions are within and not something put on you from outside of yourself, that won't happen. With empaths, it's a little harder because of their sensitivity. very often they can keep their own essence clear if they're away from others, if they're away from the stimulation of others, if they're attuned to the natural world. But sometimes that's very difficult to do. It's difficult to find space for that. And our culture doesn't seem to want to provide a natural environment for us to center ourselves. But that's a topic for another time. At this moment, I simply want to enforce the meaning of the word empathy for what it truly is. It is not sympathy, where you care about someone. It is not compassion, where you feel a spiritual cord of humanity to intervene where needed when help is required. No, it is where you literally feel the emotions of another person, where you innately can link into that person's energy, specifically their emotional energy, and experience it yourself. So, that being established, we can go on to talk about the good and the bad of that, how to accentuate what's good, and how to determine and reject what is destructive. But we'll make that for another time. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to the forest.